I realised the only person who's going to drive my career was me, and I had to take charge of it. But there was a bit of edginess to it, but I kind of go like, well, actually, I'd rather be in there with my values and let me see what I can do. And that's kind of where the book came out of, because how can I be a really good fit at Zoopla and Uswitch and be a CMO there being successful? And then I went to McDonald's and I wasn't the right fit. And in a sense, the book span out because I was kind of going, hang on, what happened here? The CMO's job is massive nowadays, and it's become so big. And I think actually, when I wrote the book, again, I was just trying to break that down in terms of all the facets. So it is your relationship with the CEO, the relationship with your C-suite peers, your team, but then it's within the job itself and making sure you understand where you're sitting and what that job's got, because quite often there can be a disconnect and you've come in thinking, okay, the job's like this, but actually it's not, it's different. But it's all about change, I suppose, and helping transform people to be effective in whatever career it is, whatever career they choose. I'm a marketeer, so what I'm doing effectively is marketing now people. So I'm thinking about, what is your mission and your vision and your, what's your personal brand and what's your strategy going to be?
Gareth, thank you for your time today, for dragging yourself across London on the tube on the hottest day of the year. It's appreciated. By way of introduction, I've been researching productivity and specifically talent, and more specifically talent that is missing from the workforce. So people between roles, taking career breaks, or even people who are, let's say, stuck in a role and feel they should be progressing. I've interviewed a number of people, and they seem to fall into two camps. One set are in control of their destiny. They're using the time to develop skills, develop their network, so in some cases, check that they are heading for the right target, but they're in control and they're using it. What looks like a gap in the CV is actually a period of intense development, let's say. Then there are people who are quite understandably, lost, rudderless. They're spending their time applying for hundreds of jobs, not hearing anything back, tweaking their CVs, LinkedIn profiles, changing their minds about what they actually want to do, which is a natural kind of, there's no judgment. I think it's very tough. But changing their direction, I guess, almost day by day, according to what they think will get them their next role. And that's tough. The reason the topic I wanted to talk about today was your Sideminds venture, because that is about helping people to manage career change, to set direction, and then to accelerate in that direction. And I think it's a really valuable, and we'll get into it, you've got a whole range of services, but I think it's a really valuable service you're providing. I want to really dig into your methodologies and your experiences so far and some of the outcomes. But before we do that, you have had a glittering career in marketing. CMO, marketing director for a whole load of household name brands. And I think there's an interesting, so I want to talk about your career. I also want to talk about your book. Copy here. The excellent Marketing Leaders Code. And I think those things obviously are related, right? You've had this career that's contained a whole load of, juxtapositions. And by the way, correct me if I get anything wrong, but you were hired into Innocent, the disruptor FMCG drinks brand, to, provide some maturity and some structure. You were hired by Mars to do the opposite, to disrupt, be entrepreneurial, spin up new brands. The early part of your career had been focused on brand, and then you realised that perhaps you needed to develop the digital side, so you moved to MoneySuperMarket, online marketplace, highly digital business, and sort of rebalanced your skill set and experience, and then went on to other online marketplaces. And I think that they are good examples of what you then write about in the book, which is how marketing is a very broad discipline across multiple dimensions, and about how you should understand where you're situated across those dimensions yourself. And then you can overlay that against the role you're in or the role you want and do some gap analysis and work out where your weaknesses are, and then you can address them. And I think obviously those two things, one builds on the other. And then I assume that provides the basis for Sideminds and the work you're doing with that. So if you don't mind, we'll start with your career. And just, if you can, pick out some of the sort of foundational roles, or some of those roles that where you were operating in different parts of those dimensions.
Okay, so I think it's quite useful. I say my career started in classic FMCG, so it is the Unilevers, it is the Nestle's, and that very much gave me some foundational learning I had overall. But I think all my career I've been I realised the only person who's going to drive my career was me, and I had to take charge of it. And when I was at Nestle, there was this funny, quirky brand called Innocent Drinks doing some very, very funky stuff. And I was very lucky to manage to become their first marketing director. But I made some very clear choices, giving up what I had in a very secure, big FMCG company to actually take a salary cut and go and do something different. But I felt like I needed to change and learn something different. That then opened up a whole new raft of experiences, actually also doing my own startup for a period of time. And then, as you said, MoneySuperMarket, I then realized, hang on, I'm actually becoming a dinosaur and I need to get digital skills, which seems a bit odd to be saying that now, but this is going back sort of 20 odd years ago. I needed to get my digital skills. So I went to MoneySuperMarket. Again, a very clear pivot. Again, actually my salary went backwards again because I was going there. But I think there's certain points in your career where you have to pivot and take charge of it yourself and move on and reflect, because I also realized deep down I wanted to be a CMO. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I kind of wanted to get to the top, which needed me to take pivots. So I had to take some risks and say, right, I've got these skills. Right, I'm going to pivot here. I'm going to go over here and learn those skills. Right, I need to pivot again. I'm going to go over here and learn these skills. But it helped me develop to get to a certain level whereby I could say I've got broad skills, but have very strong competencies in some areas. I had a certain style to myself, but at least I could look across the broad portfolio of skills overall.
So you knew that really early on in your career. You were consciously saying to yourself, I need to push in this direction in order to become more rounded, and I need to actively drive my career from the beginning. You had a sort of inner, you had this inner direction. You knew precisely where you were going from the start.
I stumbled into marketing, but once I was in marketing, I kind of saw the ladder and I wanted to climb the ladder. And that just motivated me. I wanted to get to the top of the ladder. I wasn't quite sure what happened after that, but I wanted to get to the top of it. I don't know why, but once I was on it, and maybe it was because of what was going on around me, and I kind of got driven on by my peers, and you kind of get into a bit of a bubble of like, woo, off we go. And I just literally wanted to go up it. And then once I kind of got to marketing director, I wanted to be a CMO. It almost kind of was, pushing me on, and I did. I kept kind of going on. And then as I said, I got to CMO, and then I did multiple CMO positions. But that was literally, I got to that point and I go, hang on, what do I do next? And so therefore I was doing these like this sort of thing. But there was a ladder at that point. At least I knew, from senior marketing manager to marketing to marketing director to see there was a ladder, and I wanted to follow that ladder.
And do you think that's because marketing is so broad, and I'm not a marketer, so you're obviously way more qualified. But there is a sort of creative side of the brand end of things, which is very creative. It's a longer term, more abstract, I guess, nebulous. And then there's a sort of digital direct response, short term transaction based stuff. And I think sometimes this might be just me. You tell me. People project onto marketing their own strengths and talents and experiences. So I know, I won't name names, but I know people who've got quite senior in marketing without going anywhere near the kind of digital transaction direct response and just stayed in that brand space and vice versa. But you always had that that sort of holistic picture of what a CMO needed to be.
Yeah, I think yes, I think so. And I realised my inadequacies in some ways. I kind of realised that actually, particularly having come out of brand and been in a big FMCG in the 90s, I know, horrifically 90s, I really lacked those proper digital skills, and hence why joining a marketplace was important. And I think even today, you get into a ladder, and if you are on the brand ladder, you climb it, and you kind of, it's quite hard to pick up horizontal, skills in digital or skills in social. Right. You can be quite channeled because it's kind of easy. But I think the main thing is you actually do need to pick up these skills. It's actually quite important to take experiences where you do learn about paid and you do learn about, so you've got to kind of, particularly in marketing, if you want to get to the top, you've got to have that breadth of experience. So you don't need to be an expert, but I think to have had experiences in it, because ultimately you're leading people in those areas. You need to be able to talk the language convincingly without being an expert, and you need to be able to inspire them and set some standard. So I think that if you are going to go to the top, you've got to be able to have an experience. Clearly, you can recruit great people who work for you, and I've always ended up recruiting great digital directors because that generally has been my weaker area, because I've had way longer in brand. But still, I feel I'm able to kind of manage them well. I can have a holistic view across all aspects of marketing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And do you think there are people who don't make that leap, or who don't broaden? And that's possibly fine, if you want to be one or the other.
Yeah, I just think it's short term versus long term. And I think to a certain extent there is a benefit in, just looking at the long term perspective and thinking about where you're trying to get to. Yeah. And I suppose I had a degree of North Star, and I understood what that needed as a kind of holistic set of skills, and really learning them. Now, you could learn them through doing some courses, but I personally felt the best way of learning them was to try and make a move into some industries. So to go from FMCG, I went through an entrepreneurial phase in it, but then I moved very clearly into a digital marketplace. I was brand director, but clearly in that role I was there really clearly for me to learn digital skills. Yeah. And that projected me then into a CMO of Zoopla, where I had the full responsibility across everything. But I was trying to pick up skills along the way. And I had a degree of, I suppose, a career strategy, which people don't really talk about. But I think you can have a strategy.
A lot of people don't have it.
And it's funny because I think people just literally, you can just go from job to job to job by a headhunter calling you up, and you react to that call. Whilst you can be proactive and you can be assertive and have a direction of where you want to get to, and almost achieve your own goals and achieve your own success by having some form of direction.
And this goes back to the point of having control of your career as opposed to reactively, because in a sense, it's short term, but in a sense you can reactively go to roles because you've been headhunted until those roles dry up. And we'll come on to that, because I guess that's some of it.
And I think actually there's nothing wrong with that. And people will move around. You look back and you can retrospectively say, I did this and I did that. But I think you've got to have a little bit of kind of direction within that. And yes, you can wiggle around that, but just be conscious of the bigger picture is what I'd say. And also be very clear about where you're trying to get to, and set some sort of time frames on yourself, which sounds a bit business-like, but you kind of are a brand and you are a business. And therefore, to a certain extent, you've got to think about yourself as your own little CEO. And you are managing your career, therefore, to kind of take it seriously.
Yeah. Let's come on to that, because I want to go into more depth with Sideminds. But speaking of brand, tell me about Innocent. I love that brand.
Yeah, Innocent. It was a kind of probably a lesson in how to be an entrepreneur in 100 days. And I think the number of people who actually left Innocent to do their own businesses was incredible, and all credit to the three founders. So I worked for Richard, and what an inspiring person Richard Reed, what an inspiring, wonderful person to work for. I then had the benefit later on, actually, of them becoming a non-exec, working alongside Adam again in other businesses subsequently since then. But there were three inspirational characters, created a fantastic culture, and that culture was infectious, and people wanted to work hard. Yeah. But it kind of shows that you can get so much out of people if you're very clear about what the business stands for, what you're expected to do, and it lifted everybody and created outstanding results overall.
Founders can be difficult to work for. It's their baby. They have a different relationship with the business by definition.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not saying that about any of the founders I've reported into, because they've all been great. But you know what I mean, right?
Yep.
You know, they're used to making big calls, a bit off the cuff. And so to come in a senior role, the first person in that role, was that difficult, or were they easy?
Yeah, very hard, because also coming from Nestle and then going to Innocent, it's like you're talking about two culturally quite different. And also I was kind of quite old, I suppose, because I was like, I don't know, I was in my mid to late 30s, I think, looking back, and they were, most people there in their 20s. And it sounds really weird, but I was definitely a lot older than them. And I had this kind of big classic background, and a lot of these people were they were growing up with Innocent, and they're growing up with entrepreneurial businesses. So I was kind of slightly out of fish out of water, and I was actually, you look at the models I had, and they just weren't appropriate. So I'd been used to operating a certain way, and that's one of the strengths Innocent taught me, was that actually, think about it differently. Think about, we are a small business, and I remember Richard saying to me, everything we did came down to the number of smoothies you could sell, and it just simple ROI, and it's just like, it was like the sniff test on it all. Like, can we really sell that many smoothies? And it was just this, like, those moments in meetings going, and then he kind of just to work it through, and not just think really carefully and actually build up your logic to why it would stack up.
Yeah.
And it was great, because that's a whole different skill set to how I would have operated in Nestle.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was a great opportunity, because it just built out my learning. And I think that actually some of those skills I still kind of abide by today, because you can do simple mathematical calculations to work out some ROI. And also they had things like the rocking chair test, some wonderful,
What's this?
basically when you look back and you're in your rocking chair, did you make the right decision?
Yeah.
And just simple tests, which very simple, but a really good thought. So when you are old and you're, looking back, was that the right call?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think, and a few of those things have stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I think in my career, I've moved around by those little gems I picked up, and together they really, I'm a mishmash now of different thoughts, but they all come together. And I think there's bits I've learned so much of different companies I've worked for.
And the chatty packaging.
Oh, yes.
Was that invented?
Innocent was the absolute kind of, was the original challenger brand,
brilliant.
basically up against Tropicana and category, and its language and the kind of turn over a bottle and stop looking at my bottom or whatever it said, really cute, clever. But of course that's been copied now a lot.
It has.
But that was the forerunner of that whole personality.
That's enormous. I remember that being transformational. Yeah, really, really strong.
Well, I mean, and to be honest, it was all credit to Richard and wonderful creative director internally, because all creative was predominantly done internally, and so they just produced this wonderful tone of voice, and they put it out there, and it just stood out as different. And they had some hero stores, and they made them sensational. I mean, they were, what was it? West London's favourite juice company was their goal initially. Then it was London's favourite juice company, and then it was the UK's favourite juice company. But that meant you just do things brilliantly, and you over-execute, and you just, the way these things were delivered to the shelf with the grassy shelf features and the vans, and it was all beautiful in those days. And a lot of it's now gone, but it was wonderful. And we had the village fete and things. We just a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And that, we should move on, but it just fascinates me. But previously, that using the chatty packaging, if that's the right term, and just seeing everything as an opportunity to communicate with customers, as opposed to like brand name, product name, bit of pack noise.
I mean, it's funny, my business card, I mean, everything was an opportunity to communicate. I mean, it's funny, we had business cards in those days. Who has a business card now? But even I wasn't called the marketing director. Mine was Golden Goji. It's like, make it a talking point.
Right.
And then you had the top banana, and you had all these different names, because it's like, everything's an opportunity to create a conversation. So make it work. Don't just say marketing director.
Right.
Give yourself a name, and in fact, people gave us names internally. It was a nice, charming thing you got given, and it was great. So it's like a further talking about that, and that's branding.
Yeah.
You want to create conversations. You want to stand out, be different, not just be marketing director.
Yeah. Well, people have often given me names internally in companies, but we won't talk about them right now. Tell me then about, so all of these experiences. You mentioned you're picking up these gems and obviously gaining experience as you go, as we all do, or hopefully. how does the book come about?
So from innocent, I wiggled around different companies, and I became CMO of Zoopla, and had a very successful time there. And then we sold that business actually to Silver Lake a few years ago now.
Yep.
And I was then looking for my next CMO gig, and McDonald's comes along, and most people say to me, McDonald's, like, Gareth, you're in digital land. How did you end up in McDonald's? And I go, well, it came along, and it's like, this is going to be amazing. I had £200 million budget.
It's a hell of a
200
gig. It's a hell of a
people in a
gig.
team.
Well, it was CMO of UK
and
Ireland.
Yeah, and I had full accountability for the menu. And on paper, you thought, this is going to be the bee's knees. And I thought, well, what, you can't turn down that. It's like the number 1, number 2 spender in the UK. So I kind of went for it, and I went through 12, 13 rounds of interviews.
Was there, sorry to interrupt, but was there not, like McDonald's, there's a lot of doubt, negative, it's there to be fired at. And there are a lot of people who have negative opinions of McDonald's. I mean, a lot of people obviously have a very positive, but it does attract. It's one of those brands. It's not unique, but it's one of those brands that attracts an awful lot of flack.
Yeah.
No concern about that?
What I'd say though is I think there are certain parts of the menu which are challenging. Fries, basically, that's a problem. But if you look at a Big Mac and say, okay, what is a Big Mac? It's bread, it's cheese, it's meat. Yeah. Compare that to a Pret sandwich. And actually, you probably find calorie for calorie, a Pret sandwich has got more calories in it than a Big Mac.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
And actually, but also within it, their environmental and sustainability standard is exceptionally high.
I'm sure, yeah.
And so in a sense, and I thought, well, actually, there's things I can do here to the menu. And actually, we did launch, for example, the plant burger. We did various changes. I thought, well, actually, I've got accountability here, and we can make some changes. Yeah. So I thought, well, there's an opportunity here for me to do some good. And actually, if I really boil it down, the problem is things like fries. There's a certain areas of real hotspots, but other areas I felt kind of quite good about. And actually, when I was there, we brought in paper straws. We led the industry. We actually abolished plastic toys in Happy Meal. Yeah. And I think for me, it was like, well, those were big things. Those were, coming back to innocent, rocking chair test. That was the right thing to do. But there was a bit of edginess to it. But I kind of go like, well, actually, I'd rather be in there with my values and let me see what I can do.
Yeah, I guess I didn't mean, it's not a criticism, or I guess the point is there's a disconnect between, because I've read about a lot of these things with McDonald's, and when you actually go beneath the surface, but it's always, you are never, there is a vocal minority of people, let's say, who are always going to attack McDonald's, whatever you do. And I remember reading, this may or may not be true, and it was almost certainly before your time, but that old polystyrene packaging, there was a big campaign to get rid of that, and it's actually more environmentally friendly than what they replaced it with, but they were forced to replace it just because of public pressure.
Yeah, I mean, that was before my time, but I think in a sense they
But you know what I mean? It's sort of...
No, you're right. I mean, it's in the psyche. I mean, and actually it's almost like McDonald's is the brand which we all get kind of shot at. Yeah. And I think they do get things wrong, but when I was there, I genuinely thought they were trying very, very hard to get things right. And they don't always get it right. It's a very, very big company, but they were trying, and I certainly felt it. And I felt like I didn't feel like my values are being compromised there in terms of what they're trying to do. And I kind of, it's funny being an innocent, it shaped some of my values, and it made me believe in certain principles. And I went in there and I thought, well, actually, I can operate here. Yeah. Although, in a funny kind of way, my values did get compromised in terms of working there. It just wasn't right for me.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, and I'm interrupting you again to take you back to the first time I interrupted you, which was you. Did you say how many interviews?
I had 13, 14 interviews. It was on, and I had all the psychometric tests, and I kind of got to the end of it, and then I got offered this fabulous job, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. Yep. So I did go in. I mean, the funny story is that when I went in there, the first day I went in, I got met by my PA, or my EA rather, and she took me upstairs, and I thought, oh, crikey, the executive team had their own floor. I thought, wow, this is quite flash. And then I walked past the chief financial officer, who was in a suit and tie. I thought, wow, this is kind of quite something. And then I got taken into my office. They hadn't
done this as a practical joke on your
first day. Yeah, because I thought it was McDonald's. And I got taken into my office, and the first thing I got asked was, how would you like your office decorated? And this just flummoxed me. And actually, in the end, it was quite an interesting sign, because I wasn't the right fit. I wasn't
Yeah.
the right fit. And actually, I'm not saying that's what McDonald's is like, but just at that moment in time, for me, I wasn't the right fit. And I was there for 18 months, I can't remember now, 18 months, 2 years, but I wasn't the right fit. And that's kind of where the book came out of, because how can I be a really good fit at Zoopla and Uswitch and be a CMO there being successful? And then I went to McDonald's and I wasn't the right fit. And in a sense, the book span out because I was kind of going, hang on, what happened here? And I left and I left and I just was processing it. It just wasn't right. And I knew kind of in reflection from that first moment, I knew it wasn't right. And yet I'd gone through the process.
A big process.
A big process.
You got to question
and
that.
I had these
hiring
big
process.
shiny lights out there.
Yeah.
And probably I wasn't being true to myself. And this whole point about actually really understanding yourself is so important, because as much as, I mean, again, every experience I had, I don't regret. It's a great experience, fabulous thing to have done. But probably it was not the right thing for me to have, the journey for me to have gone on. And actually, in a sense, when I wrote the book, was reflecting on that experience and reflecting on core skills you need and being clear about who you are and where you will best put those skills to use. And that's partly based just for me as a CMO, getting another CMO job, but also people recruiting new people in. And I think that for me, they thought, oh, we need someone different. We need someone who's not a McDonald's person. We need someone who's different to what we are. And it's almost like grass is greener over there. But in reality, to be successful at McDonald's, you need to have been at McDonald's for a long time. And my C-suite peers have been there 15, 20 years. And there's this newbie coming from a digital business. I mean, I was very different. But, you know, they were a great company. I would never knock them. I just was the wrong person at the wrong time, or, you know, whatever. I was the right person at the wrong company, or whatever you say.
Something was wrong.
Something was
in
wrong.
the equation
Something
didn't
was wrong,
add
and
up.
it was right for me to move on. But then I processed it, and I learned, first of all, CMOs spin really quickly.
Yes.
Two and a half years is a really fast spin, very much influenced by the CEO. And it's kind of a taboo, this sort of thing about leaving jobs. It's like you don't really talk about it, so keep it quiet. But then I kind of asked around, and all my mates said, God, you know, hasn't this happened to you before? We've all had it happen, you know, come
Welcome
on.
to the club.
And then it literally turns out that I then did some research with 100 CMOs, and it turned out that on average, the average was just over 3 times people have been exited from businesses.
Right.
And it's literally 1 every 10 years is what will happen. And that was for 90% of people. And there's only 10% or about 9% of people who hadn't had this experience. So it's really small, but it's just what happens. And it's almost like you then go, okay, that's part of my career journey. Don't worry about it. It just happens, and just see it as an opportunity and bounce on. Because it is, you can really spiral and just take it personally.
Yep.
Sometimes just recruitment processes go wrong. Sometimes culture is not right. Sometimes the CEO's a dick. I don't know, whatever. There's things happen and it's just not right. But that's the process of careers. It's just what happens.
Is it? But that marketing, the churn of CMOs, you're saying is well, it feels like it's higher than other C-suite.
Yeah,
roles.
definitely higher. I mean,
Why do you think that? Is that down to the sort of complexity of the role and that range, or other factors?
it's multiple factors actually, because one of the biggest factors is, you know, CMOs, when a CEO changes, quite often the first person they look at is the CMO, and quite often you see CMOs change when a CEO changes. It just flows through, because I think a CMO, their partnership with the CEO is really important, understanding what their goal is and does it marry up. And actually, you know, you see when they combine well, it's incredible. If they don't, it just gets awkward, because in a sense, the CMO is bringing to life the narrative of the CEO's goals. And you want to find that you are aligned. And likewise, you're aligned to the CEO, you're aligned to the C-suite, and you're able to bring that narrative to life within the company and externally.
Okay.
But I think it's the CMO's job is massive nowadays, and it's become so big. And I think that actually, when I wrote the book again, I was just trying to break that down in terms of all the facets. So it is your relationship with the CEO, the relationship with your C-suite peers, your team, but then it's within the job itself and making sure you understand where you're sitting and what that job's got, because quite often there can be a disconnect, and you've come in thinking, okay, the job's like this, but actually it's not, it's different.
Well, there can be a disconnect between where you think you're situated and where you're actually situated as well
Absolutely.
in the first place.
Yeah.
So the McDonald's experience was this catalyst to write the book.
Yep.
And then you brought everything together in the book. It's very. I found it. I don't know if I got it last time. This is what you do on podcasts, by the way. I've seen it.
Okay.
It's comprehensive and concise at the same time. It's got a very simple methodology. You've distilled into a methodology. It's kind of what's a good way of thinking? It's approachable. I mean, I read it in one sitting.
Yeah.
But it's also wise. It's got this wisdom to it, and you've distilled everything down. It forms the basis, I assume, for what you're doing at Sideminds. Because I want to talk about that. Can you summarize it?
The book.
I guess the approach. The multiple dimensions, right? It's a simple concept.
Yeah.
With multiple dimensions,
Yeah.
and if I think there's certainly a way of assessing yourself within the book, and I think there's a more extensive one on your site, right? So is it? Yeah, can you condense it even more than you did for the book and give us an overview of the approach?
Well, I suppose the thing is, a lot of it is just being able to understand your skills.
Yeah.
And I think the exercise I went through was to just boil down what is it to be successful as a CMO. And I kind of went through and I realized actually there's a yin and yang to everything. So for example, we talked about marketing before. There's brand marketing, there's digital marketing. And then you can have a team and you can be very assertive with your team, or you can be very supportive with your team. There's lots of different, there's always dualities through. And the thing about marketing is it is always kind of black and white. There's always all this duality going on the whole time. And in my, when I was just really thinking about it, I was actually about to start a new job, and I thought, I want to nail this job. I want to really nail it. And I kind of went through it, and I realized that actually there were 6 layers, and each one has got a duality. So it sounds slightly complicated, but the first one was, there's an acronym called Anchor Factors, ANCHOR. But each one is the top one was all about the CEO and your relationship with them, and how you're gonna. I mean, are they all about change, or are they all about kind of consistency?
Yeah.
And you're like, where do they sit overall? And it's like really understanding that. And the next one down was the C-suite. So these are your peers now, and how are you going to treat with them, and what's the duality you're going to operate there? Then it's your team. And then you get into 3 layers of marketing, and it's you're going to be digital versus brand, long term versus short term, and it goes through these different layers and asks you questions and assesses where you fit.
Yeah,
and you get like a beautiful picture of who you are, but then you get people to assess you as well, and how do they see you, so you can pick out blind spots. And similarly, if someone was recruiting, they can look at a job and it gives a profile for the job, so you can say actually this is the profile we need of the job, and then you can marry people up to it. So that kind of was what the book was about. And I said, in a sense, I was wanting to understand myself how come I was so successful elsewhere and not here? Well, it's because my skills lined up beautifully with what that job was. Now, when I look back at the McDonald's job, what they wanted, and I particularly, because I think there's a lot about, it's your competency in being a marketeer, which is the bottom 3 parts of Anchor. But the top part, the A, N, and C, that's all about influence and about your CEO, your C-suite. And that's where McDonald's had a very clear stamp. And my profile wasn't aligned. And that's where it kind of, yes, I could do the marketing bit, but actually it was the influence and the profile and the global impact. That's where I was a bit out of line. And that's where Anchor Factors and the Marketing Leaders Code fits, because it helps you understand yourself and roles. And I suppose that's when I suddenly got into careers and change. And it started a journey. I didn't expect this journey to happen, but it started a journey, which then evolved into Sideminds and other areas.
So let's can you summarize what Sideminds is, how you're helping people?
Okay, so Sideminds is a site which helps C-suite and senior executives go through change. And this might be they are in between jobs, like I was, help them find a job. It might be people who are in a job and they hate their job and they want to kind of figure out where they're going next. And that could be somebody who's a marketing director, wants to become a C-suite, or they just want to know where they're going. And that, I talk about career strategy, and it's like, okay, let me figure out your career strategy. Or it could be people who've kind of been in the C-suite for 5 years and they go like, what am I doing next? And they want to kind of switch into their next career journey. So that might be a portfolio career, but I literally help people work through these things. I also do first 100 days. When you land well, but it's all about change, I suppose, and helping transform people to be effective in whatever career it is, whatever career they choose.
So on that point, how do you go deeper into examining what people actually want? You know, because there are a lot of people. If you've had a long career, and there's a sort of received wisdom about what your next step should be, and I think sometimes people have deviated from a path, from their own path, and perhaps need some time or some help to identify actually what their own direction should be. You know, you make small compromises throughout your career journey, and you can end up at a senior level you can end up a way away from where you actually originally wanted to be, or where you now realise that you do want to be. Yeah. Do you help people with that?
Yeah, and I think the thing is that as you go up it's kind of, we are on a ladder in a way, and it's like you kind of go up a marketing ladder or a commercial ladder, and you kind of go up it, and you can, you know that can drive you on. And I think in a certain extent you kind of get to the top of this ladder or near the top of the ladder, and you think, hang on, where am I? How did I get here? And I think actually you get driven up. A lot of it's through your peers, because you end up you get just sucked along, and then you suddenly get there going, hang on, well, I am here now, and now what I want to do, particularly, in my stage, I had my kids left home, and you kind of go, well, hang on, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What's this all about? Yeah. And stopping, and I think giving people the space. Now, on my site, what I do try and do is provide lots of free material. So I have headhunter lists for permanent jobs, so over 400 headhunted names, and there is like interim and NED and all, and it's like, kind of knock yourself out, have a go at it, and try and figure it out for yourself. But I feel deeply that when you're going through change, you need like a wing person.
Yeah.
Someone who can help you, because you can get lost in your head, and almost someone who can help you through the journey. And actually, who is there to do that? I mean, I always think it's like headhunters or an old kind of HR director, but someone who's really independent and can say, okay, let's just talk about it and work it through. And someone who's been in the C-suite who can genuinely offer you advice. And that's what I try and do, and try and help people unpack that.
I think that's critical, and it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, which was the people I've interviewed who are operating in a vacuum, they're getting no feedback from anywhere. Obviously not colleagues, because they're between roles. Perhaps they've lost touch with their network since remote working, or whatever it might be. And the more you need that input and that feedback from somebody. Yeah. So I think that's a critical service. You do one-to-one coaching as well as the free resources.
Yeah. So basically, and I really important. I kind of I just think in a sense, particularly if you're in between roles, and I've been there, and money's tight, and you're worried, and in a sense, therefore, I try to provide stuff so people can have a look, and they can look at, I've got templates and some guidance and bits and bobs, just have a go. But it's mainly there for have a go, but then it almost like if you need some guidance. So everybody who goes there, I give them free 30-minute consultation. Okay. But on top of that, I just then try to kind of take them on a process. And a lot of it really depends upon the person's needs. So I do have 6 or 7 standard courses, but depending upon what people want, typically I'll be kind of really starting off trying to understand that North Star, to be really clear.
This is going to be my question. Do they know what they want? That was going to be my question.
Some people do. And actually it's interesting, sometimes people come to me and quite quickly they'll say, oh, Gareth, I'm looking at a portfolio career and I want to do this. And you then start digging, you go like, but you really want another C-suite job, don't you?
Yeah,
I do.
Because you can for a number of reasons, this idea you're sort of fishing on LinkedIn, portfolio, non-exec, it's consultant, etc. There's a lot, and
also to some extent it gives you cover. I think you
Yes.
kind of, if you say, I'm now consulting or I'm doing this, it gives you cover on your profile, on your personal brand. It kind of gives you cover. But the reality is you are looking for your next job.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and people do need to kind of create a story. But the fact is, actually, as come back to the beginning, it happens. People do go in and out of jobs, and it's almost like the taboos there. I mean, I spoke to several headhunters, and same thing they said to me. It's like, Gareth, oh my God, this happens. We know it happens. Don't worry about it. They said, go and take 6 months off. Enjoy yourself. Just decompress.
Yeah.
And actually, I think there's a real strength to actually having the confidence to properly reflect. And again, this is what I try to do, is take people on a bit of a journey to really reflect about what they really are. And it could be, where do you mean in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but having that kind of almost like backbone to your career, know where you're going and why you're going there, because it does help make life a lot easier. So, of course, you'll always get headhunters contacting you, but you can then be more assertive yourself and create your own luck.
Yeah.
But you need a bit of, I think, just waiting for the headhunter. It's like waiting for fish to go by the river. You can chuck all your lines out. Okay, maybe you'll kind of catch a few fish and it'll take you along. But I think actually at the same time, you could be way out at sea, and actually where you want to be is, you've drifted.
Yeah.
And actually, what do you really want to do? So it's quite important to have that career strategy and clarity. So I do really start off with what is your North Star, and understanding you, understand what makes you happy, understand your energies, think about all those roles that you've loved, and then go through and understand, what if you are, for example, going into a portfolio career, status, ego, how much money do you really know? I mean, it's staggering how money gets in the way of these things. But then taking people in a very structured way through this so they get clarity. And when you get clarity, you get confidence. And there's nothing like somebody who's got clarity and confidence then talking to people for a job, because you want to give them the job because they are very clear about themselves. And you can tell people, people who've got, well, you mentioned it before, some people who get lost. Yeah. And there's some people who are very clear, and there are very different personalities.
Yeah. And that, the people who get lost often, sometimes have no ideas and they're just scratching their heads. But the opposite is also true. They can have a million ideas.
Yeah.
Now's my chance to finally be whatever that thing is. And I think, again, it's unless you're getting feedback, some structure around that thought process, you can end up in all sorts of places or nowhere.
Yeah. Right? But also, it's also when you do that, I think it's the consequences of whatever that's going to be. And I think it's really good. But go through the journey of it, of kind of fitting that job on yourself. And actually, one of the exercises to do is, particularly people going into a portfolio career, because there are obviously clearly a gazillion things you could do, is let's just try on that try on being a university lecturer.
So you're visualizing this is
so I go through an exercise and be very clear about, so there's a number of exercises you go through and you end up with like, this is who I am. And it's almost like a SWOT, but to a certain extent you go through a number of exercises, you're very clear on it, and it's like your key strengths, best parts of you, and the areas you've got to be kind of watch out for. But then so you got that, and then you just try on a job. And you say, well, this is, and I've broken down, 30, 40 typical portfolio jobs. I say, let's just try that on. And I know you said you wanted to be a NED or a coach, but hang on a minute. So coaching, good example. A lot of people want to be a coach. Yeah. But then you boil them down, and they're very directional. They just want to get on and do it. And actually, so that's going to be interesting coaching. So you're not going to be, how reflective are you going to be? How, style-wise. And I think it's just good exercise to go through. But I think you could just lose your way and think, oh, I'd like to be a coach, and I'd like to do this. But you've got to sort of stop and think about, actually, what are you great at? And you will have some phenomenal strengths. Let's work out what they are, and then fit on jobs around that. Or you'll have your own idea of what they are, and just check in and work that through with someone, so you don't end up spending 3 years trying to do something which doesn't really fit. But that's a lot of the exercise, trying to be clear about what your absolute DNA is, and then work out jobs around that. And that could be you then being very assertive and contacting companies direct for jobs, or networking with key people of influence who may not just affect your next job, but the job after. But you then start channeling a plan and building up skills. So you end up connecting with key people who will have influenced your job in 2 years' time. But you start that process.
And I guess it's a continuation. Your different levels. There's the exercise in the book where you situate yourself across these dimensions. There are resources on your site for free and a free initial consultation. I guess you're bringing things into focus, or the client will be, and then the one-to-one coaching, which goes deeper and further. So everything begins to come back together. And you do, I think, you do retreats as well.
Yeah,
I've done more in depth.
I've done one.
Okay.
I've done one, and this is the plan, but highly successful. Successful because, in a sense, but it's interesting because we did one with some CEO level, and actually did it in a nearby vineyard, and just happened the people who set up the vineyard were from HSBC originally, and therefore they had a wonderful story they could tell, and I think it's quite inspiring to get this connection because it kind of shows, you can be quite bold. So when you are thinking about change, well, why not? You could do vineyard, but the reality is, but just helping expand people's mindset. But I've done one mainly one-on-ones, but I want to do more because I think that proper time out with peers of the same standard, bringing in inspirational speakers who can help, I think people need it, just that space. And then you create a community who you can then talk to over the long run and help you on that journey because these things take time. And I think you need to let it kind of noodle around a bit. So yes, a journey I'm on myself, trying to advance that. Yeah.
And you've got broader services. You're working with advisors to provide broader services beyond the. Yeah. Tell me a bit about what you got.
So people come to me and I'll talk to them about their North Star. I will help them with their how they then present themselves. That might be their CV, their LinkedIn profile. It might be I look at it, I'm a marketeer. So what I'm doing effectively is marketing now people. So I'm thinking about, what is your mission and your vision and your, what's your personal brand and what's your strategy going to be? But you can always get deeper and richer on this. So I've got a fantastic person who is on LinkedIn who just will absolutely sort out your LinkedIn profile and make you like whatever you want to be.
My LinkedIn profile is a disaster.
Oh, well, talk to Laura. But I've also got a lawyer there, people's settlement agreements. Okay. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, you need advice. Fantastic lawyer. I've got a financial advisor there. Because also, if you are going to pivot, you just need to know about your financial circumstance. I've got other coaches on there. I've got a fantastic person. Actually, when I wrote this, she was my advisor. She was just said, "Look, Gareth, I help people write books." She wasn't my writer, but she just gave me a framework. So I've got her on there. But people I've come across who are fabulous people who can help you on the journey. So I can actually get the ball rolling, but you might need to go deep into an area. And if you need to go really, really deep, then I've got some fabulous experts to kind of pick up and help run with it.
It's a good combination, it seems to me, of that sort of the more in-depth, creative, abstract, ensuring you're setting the right direction for your career and life, but also that immediately practical stuff around settlement agreements or those sorts of.
Well, in that moment, you kind of wonder where to turn to. And so I thought, well, actually, I've got advice on settlement agreements on the site. So first of all, have a look at that. But then actually, you know what? If you are in the moment, you've got a very short period of time, and you're under pressure. I don't know anyone who's gone through a settlement agreement and thought that was an enjoyable moment. It's just not. No. And therefore, here are people who can help you, and they're nice people who will look after you.
Yeah. I really like. It seems to me that when you talk about your, or somebody's North Star, it's more a case of, rather than giving someone a sort of a route to a CMO role or whatever their direction is, it's much more about giving them a compass. A route or a map suggests, well, I've done all this before. You do this, then you do this, then you do this. Whereas a compass gives someone, because everyone's journey is unique, it gives them the direction they need to go in and the tools to help them. But it's a personal thing. Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, it's funny you say compass because I had a good discussion with somebody about this a while ago, because I actually think there's three things you need: a compass, a clock, and an engine. Because you do need a compass, but you've got to keep an eye on the clock, because the trouble is you can drift And actually, you can have here's where I'm going, and of course, it would never be a linear line. You may drift off a little bit, and then you've got to drift back. But you've got to keep an eye on what you're doing and how you're doing it, and then you need an engine, and that's ultimately your personal drive. Because the risk is you can just your own well-being and your own engine. You've got to look after yourself, and whatever you're doing, you've got to look after yourself. And actually, you can have a compass, but if you're not careful, you just you can wear yourself down. But you've got to. So I think those three are really, really important, and kind of making sure you've got the energy in the tank to keep going. And I suppose when I talk to people, it's very important to me that yes, you end up with your compass, but you've got to think about some timeframes and how things are going to work. And I go on these career pathways of people, and yes, you've got a destination, but you've probably got 4 or 5 pathways you can go down, which feels the right pathway.
Yeah.
And you work out all the steps you need to do and who are the people, and just map that all through, and then keep an eye on the clock, because some people can be in jobs for 10 years and go, oh my God, that's all gone by, and I now can't go there. So it's a degree of just pragmatism and standing back and looking at it and being, not kind of suddenly jumping, but just be mindful of what you're doing the whole time. And as I said, it's a strategy. And if you're a business, you would have a compass, a clock, and there'll be an engine. You'd be thinking about how things are running. I think you just got to look at yourself as a business and kind of keep an eye on it and just check where you are and stand back every now and again.
Yeah. No, it's a really clear way of thinking about it. And speaking of clocks, our time is up.
Is it? Oh.
Yeah. Doesn't it fly?
It does fly by.
I think it's great. I wish you all the very best of luck. It's also one of those things that it is so meaningful, to be able to help people with these sort of career changes and finding direction and all these sorts of things. So, best of luck with it, and keep me posted.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.